Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you back here with us, here to awaken your inner genius. And I am here with our panel, John Bonzel, the former president of the University of Science and Philosophy, 50-year student, Margaret Rue, who worked with Leo for 10 years, also a 50-year student. John worked with Leo for 2 years. And we have my love, 30-year student, Ken Pearson, who is recovering from hip replacement surgery. Thrilled to have everyone here. And we have our tech team behind the scenes that keeps everything running. So before we dive into Unit 7 here tonight, may we just pause for a moment, the wonderful sound of the ocean that John has gifted us with, and just get centered here in this moment as we get into the universal heartbeat. So if you'll just breathe in deeply, find yourself right here, understanding that everything that we need to know is deep inside. You may want to take a look at the ocean, as it is a wonderful example of the universal heartbeat. Relax and get into this moment, knowing that you will take away exactly what you need to take away, centered in your heart, and invite in the knowing and the light and the love that is here for you on this day. When you're ready, come back to us, please. Today, we are going to be diving into Unit 7. So let me just share with you a quick snapshot before an announcement that we have this evening. The rest of this month will be all about Unit 7. Hard to believe that we are now over halfway through our year together. Pretty powerful, isn't it, John?
Yes, it is. It's exciting.
It is exciting. But before we dive into Unit 7 here tonight in Lesson 25, we did want to take a moment and celebrate a life triumphant. So you know that our beloved panelist, Jim Porter, has not been with us for the past few episodes, and we wanted to celebrate his wife, Jackie, here this evening. So if you'll take a look at here, just for a few moments, Jackie refolded last Sunday, December 1st, 2024, after a battle with cancer. And we wanted to pause for a moment and honor her. Honor her for her gifts and for her love of this message. This Awaken Your Inner Genius is actually underneath the Age of Character Club that was launched by Jim and Jackie. And if you'll take a look at even some of her art, Ken, I know the art was especially spoke to your heart. And
I have one of her pieces in it, and all of it speaks to your heart. It's amazing the work that she did.
And if you'll take a look, we love to remember. Take a look at the young soul here. John, you've known her for almost this long, haven't you?
Yes, of course, Jim is my cousin, so I've known him forever. And then he and Jackie met in '78, and I met her during that year, and we have spent so much time together. And I would like our audience to know that that Jackie, when the artwork was stored for 20 years and the message was pretty much dormant, Jackie was out there promoting this message in her own way on Facebook and other things to try to keep it alive and to keep people interactive. And I can't tell you the hundreds, if not thousands of hours that Jackie and Jim sacrificed traveling from Pennsylvania to Virginia and staying with me all those times to, move things forward with the message. And I know that's Jim's, one of his biggest dreams is to get this message out there and promote it. And I'm glad we're here helping fulfill those dreams for the two of them. So God bless Jackie. God bless Jim.
We'll take a look at this next picture. We showed this to you a few episodes ago. This is of Jackie and Jim. Such a handsome couple. Look at them back in 1978. And then this last photo is how most of you know them. This was one of our earlier broadcasts And I wanted to read something from Jim as we just simply dedicate this particular session this evening in her honor. And when I asked if he was going to be joining us today, this is what he said. He said, "My love arrived in body form within this carbon octave, March 14th, 1955. Neither her or my life was whole until we met in 1978. I knew love from that time until now. The ups and downs of life, of the embodied life, was indeed a rocky and steep one, but its foundation was the eternal fulcrum of balance as love. I miss her body beside me terribly, but will still walk with her soul until I leave this octave. My mood right now is neither sadness nor is it joy. It is a deeper reverence of God's law of balance, of give and re-give. I will not attend class tonight, but will return next Sunday. I have much to do to properly honor her this week. God bless you all for giving this message so well." So we are sending much love to Jim and their entire family. She leaves behind 2 sons. And Margaret, you also knew Jackie as well.
I sure did. I still remember the excellent talk they gave together at a One Heart presentation at Swananoa. And I believe it is on the One Heart site, and it might even be on the philosophy.org, but it was an excellent talk.
So to everyone who is here with us tonight, if you would simply just join us in honoring Jim and Jackie and a life well lived. And the most important way that we can honor her is, like John said, is to continue the message. And that is where we are this evening. So we are going to dive in. Karen is not able to be with us this evening, but she did do a video for us, and she did do it based on the prelude to Unit 7. So we do have that gift for you at the end. But why don't we go ahead and dive into the prelude? So this is in Unit 7. And John, if you would, please read section number 1. And I'm going to ask Ken to read section number 2.
Very good. Future generations must learn to change their conceptions regarding life and death to the way of thinking which the following portrays. Number 1, think of yourself in this way. I eternally exist. I live in 2 universes. My mind lives eternally in God's universe of still light. My body lives in transient sequences of God's dynamic universe of moving light.
Ken, if you'll do 2 and 3, please.
All right. Mind has all knowledge. I am mind, and all knowledge is within me, awaiting its slow awakening. Mind thinks what it knows to create bodies in the image of mind thinking.
And Margaret, if you go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought you wanted me to read it. Never mind. Go ahead, Margaret. I was going to go ahead. Go. Sorry.
Margaret, you're on mute. I was wondering if you could join us for 4 and 5.
Oh, sorry. Number 4, my body is what
John read the goddamn
I desire it to be. I control it, for I made it. It in no way controls me. My destiny is of my own choosing. My body must fulfill my destiny at my command. It shall not demand from me that which will not fulfill my destiny. Number 5, my body is not me. It is the tool I use in manifesting me. Periodically, I lay it down to rest and take it up again to use each day. I continue my thoughts of yesterday into today.
And number 6, after many years of use, I lay it down for complete rebuilding and a long rest. I then take it up again to continue where I left it after the long yesterday. And number 7, I am immortal. The mortal image I am making is but my thinking. It is not me. My thinking changes and my body image changes, but that is not me. I myself never change. So I wanted to pause there for a moment and open up for the panel, if we'll go to our panel right quick, because that was an unusual, this was a prelude to the whole unit. And so why do you think they did that, John?
Well, look, the Russells are getting down to business now, and you gotta join in. You gotta catch up, and so they're just trying to lay the groundwork that you are not your body. You control your body through your thinking, and they're trying to make that separation between mind and body. Your mind and not body. And so we need to drive that point home this evening so that everybody can understand that they're that microscopic dot of light centered in the pineal gland that manifests its knowing.
Margaret, you want to add to that?
Yes, Leo, in her illumination, she was told, "Thou shalt know space, but never emptiness." And so they reference mind as a 0 point, but it's not really zero. In other words, space is not empty. Many people look out into space and think it's a huge, vast emptiness. But after, knowing Leo and studying her course, I consider space to be very alive and full of energy. And when they reference 0, it doesn't mean 0, it means dimensionless. So no dimension, but ever pervasive. So in other words, the space or the stillness is ever present.
Wow, very powerfully said. Ken, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. It's in the writings. You're going to hear Walter Russell talk about, and Leo reference space as being God. And the way the magnitude of space really hits me is that if you took all the space that separates the cells in your body, right, all your cells, you got billions and billions and billions of cells, took all the space that separates them from colliding each other, you need a microscope to see yourself. So your body is not who you are. It's not even real. You need a microscope to see it if you remove the space that separates the cells.
All right, so very powerful start, and I found this particular lesson was especially poignant to me, considering that Jackie just refolded, and I thought the timing of the lesson was very, very powerful, and perhaps it was Jackie's way of blessing us with a lesson here this evening. And so, as we dive into lesson 25, I wanted to pull a quote from the Divine Iliad right there at the beginning. And John, if you'll read that, and I was going to show them the Divine Iliad because that's where they started.
Very good. Take thou man's death away from him in this new day of man. Give him eternal life in me by knowing me in him.
Notice how the words are capitalized there. Life in me, knowing me in him. And that was something that really has spoken to me all the way through the home study course, is how purposeful they are in capitalizing certain words.
Yes. And when you see a
John,
capitalized word, I'm sorry, when you see a capitalized word or statement in bold print, you need to pay attention.
All right, so I just wanted to show everybody the Divine Iliad here. So this is a copy of the Divine Iliad. This is, so if you would, John, in a snapshot, just share what the Divine Iliad is. And Margaret, I'm going to ask you if Leo ever had much to say about the Divine Iliad. The Divine Iliad is included in the home study course, even though our Awaken Your Inner Genius focuses on the home study course. So John, what is this precious book?
The home study, the message of the Divine Iliad is a 2-volume set. And what it is, it's the 30,000 words that Dr. Russell wrote when he came out of his illumination. And in those 30,000 words, there was never an erasure or a correction. And our audience needs to know that. And it's very powerful. The meter in which the Divine Iliad is written It's a little tough, but once you get started and once you kind of get into the flow of that meter, it's just beautiful. And the message of the Divine Iliad is directly from God to man, and Dr. Russell was the messenger to deliver that. Now, can you imagine in Dr. Russell's grand illumination, the first words that he hears with his inner hearing? Thou shalt be my next messenger to mankind. Can you imagine how a person would feel hearing that inner voice? And I would probably go, you mean me, God?
Are you talking to me?
Are you talking to me, God?
Hey,
Well, I
Bonzo.
wanted to show everybody this one, and I'll ask Margaret comment because I'll be honest with you, to Dee and Linda and Judy and Margie and Deb and Karen, all of you that are with us here this evening, I wasn't able to really drink this in until after I had studied the home study course, and then all of a sudden, it's now one of my favorite books. I take it with me and I travel with it. Margaret, what's your thought on this before we dive in?
You know, Leo, the reason she did it, that's actually another edition that we did after Leo refolded. But when she was alive, they published it in 2 volumes. And she said it's so much to take in. So half of it is in volume 1. And then they have some lectures and also Q&A. And it helps a person assimilate the Iliad message more easily. And Johnny's right that, Walter Russell, it's taken directly with what Walter Russell wrote. And sometimes his writing wasn't too legible while he was in the light. And Leo told me when she read it, she knew if Walter Russell changed a word. And so she went back to the original document and she made him correct it to what the original document indicated. Because Walter Russell did make only just 1 or 2 changes, but she knew exactly where those changes were because she was of the same mind. So she pointed those out to
Wow.
Walter.
It's like an insider story there. I love that, Margaret.
Yes.
And Ken,
Yes.
and Ken, my love, you love the Divine Iliad. That's
Yep. Both 1 and 2. You want to know about love? You want to know why you're here? God, there's so many things. There's the salutation to the day, invocation to the night, which are super, super powerful living applications of the kind of conduct that we try and have in our lives. So many things there's. I couldn't get into it. I know that Kimberly has asked me to quote it at times, which I can, but it takes the time. It would be in a meditative state. But to me, it's funny because when I read The Man Who Tapped the Secrets, I wanted that book, Divine Iliad 1 and 2, so bad because he just teases you in The Man Who Tapped of like, I haven't printed this yet, but it's coming. And that was when I was like, oh my God, I got to find out where in the world at this point it's got to be out. Where is it? How do I get it? And that Man Who Tapped changed my life. It put me on a mission. And those Divine Iliads are, to me, man, I've read them so many times. And every time I make a pass, I learn more and more each time. But it's like reading Shakespeare. It's like John said. Don't get down on yourself if you don't feel like you totally connect to it. If you start reading it, just give it a couple more passes. And then also what I did is the 10 lectures is what was Margaret was referring to, is what's in there. But in the back of it are question and answers, which really help you to get a little more clarity of what's being said. But also like read the Book of Love, because we're all looking and wondering what love is. So even though it's kind of Shakespearean, it's in the vein of what I think we all would like to know more about. And I got just wonderful insight. Like love, if you really know love, you wouldn't mourn the loss. Like, man, that's some deep stuff just because of the beauty of touching true love. That's a powerful statement, man. There's so many great truths in there. So many great truths.
So on a future episode, John, will come to you. On a future episode, we'll actually have Ken recite the salutations of the day, because it is beautiful and it is something that he ends up gifting me with quite a bit. So I absolutely love it. Touches my heart deeply. John?
Well, I wanted to share with the audience a story about Glenn Clark and Walter Russell. And they would tour together. And Glenn Clark was deep within, Orthodox Christian religion. And he and Doc would travel and visit certain churches and so on. So Doc said to this one audience, I think he said it many times, he said, throw away your Bibles and pick up the Divine Iliad. And so after that trip, Glenn kind of wrote a letter to Dr. Russell saying, look, you got to stop saying that. You can't.
Got to stop saying that to people in the 1950s.
So they had a little falling out over that. And but I think Doc did stop saying it, but that short-lived their travels together, I think.
Well, I've mentioned to the audience before that I was a former Southern Baptist housewife, and I actually my Bible, if I were to show it to you, I have studied it enormously. I could I'll show you all the highlights. I mean, many, but I will tell you the pureness and the love that radiates through this work as well is very, very powerful. And in fact, the language, is very similar. And so I want to bring up Karen's comment here from the chat box. I love what she has to say about this. And John, if you would please read her comment.
She said, the Divine Iliad caught me over 40 years ago. Then I went to Swannanoa to see and be there, even though they were no longer there. I just had to go from Arizona. Wow. Now, see, that's being moved.
Yep.
There was something within Karen that was inspired, that she wanted to, visit and just find the birth, the birth of this wonderful book. So good on you, Karen. That's wonderful. 40 years. You're
Love
blessed.
that.
Yeah, that's a minute, man. I came out here in '98. I thought I'd trudge out from the West Coast, Karen. You beat me there big time.
Well, so let's go ahead and yes, Margaret.
Oh, I was just going to say, on that very first quote, give him eternal life in me by knowing me in him. Some people, sometimes they get confused, but when the message is saying in me, it's actually God saying, give man eternal life in me by knowing me in him. So it's not Walter Russell referencing himself, in other words.
Thank you for clarifying that.
It's
the term is seek me, know me, be me. That's the motto of what Walter Russell is in the Divine Iliad. Seek me, know me, be me. And I think that's what Margaret's referring to, that God, we are all, the idea of Walter said, the works I do are nothing to the works ye can do. We all are of the light. We all have that omniscient divine light centering us. We have access to all presence, all knowledge, and all power.
So let's dive in. Yes.
I was just going to also say, Leo did say Walter Russell was a little too direct sometimes.
Yep.
And so she tried to temper him as much as she could. But before they were married and before they met, he was probably a little too direct and impatient for people, to get it. And
somehow I really relate to that, Margaret.
But Leah Russell, I think her way of simplifying the message and making it more teachable in the home study course and in the books that they wrote together makes it a little easier too.
There's a story of Leo going to Doc saying that you're talking over people's heads and you're being condescending and you need to back down. And Doc even says it in one of his lectures. So Leo taught me to start talking with love. I was speaking with love, but I wasn't living with love in my lecture. And so I found a loving way. And one of the most loving things that I heard him say, and he says a lot, is, well, I've answered that question several times already, but let me reword it another way and answer the question again. And my first mentor used to do that. It was just a beautiful, glorious, humble way to say, okay, let me just see if I can make it another way that you'll get it, even though I've already given you the answer.
All right. So to the panel, we're already at almost half past the hour. I want us to go ahead and dive into page 500 because this time we are diving into life and death. And so this was a big lesson here. So Margaret, if you would read that paragraph that's highlighted in yellow, because that really anchors what we're discussing.
Life and death are but interchanging between rest and action, as all things in nature, without exception, are. They are an eternal continuity of repeated interchanging with each other. For life could not live without death, and conversely, death could not die without life.
All right, so this is important because in the next paragraph, they go on to talking about the fact that man has an ignorance and fear of death. And so I wanted to ask the panel just to comment on this first paragraph, because for anyone who has lost a spouse, who has lost a child, who has lost someone important in their life, and this is really a very different way of viewing life and death. John?
Yes. So in man's beginning, right? And still to this day, I don't know what percentage of the population still does, but I'm sure it's a large part that they think their body is them. Okay. So if you lose the body, then you're done and that's it. So that's kind of a barbaric way to look at life and death. But I just wrote a note here for everyone. And this is what came to me because I reread, this lesson again this morning. And just know that everything that is within the physical realm is on borrowed time from God. And all it is a holographic projection of an idea. And like over Kimberly's right shoulder, right? And over my right shoulder, we have the wave. And so those holographic projections of all ideas, the complexity and the multiplicity of all ideas that follow that sequence of that wave. But at some point, and Kimberly, I think you were going to demonstrate sometime this evening the pendulum, right? So we have action, we got reaction, right? Just go ahead and swing it, right?
Okay. I'm going to try to go here.
That's it. So one side, one side is that the pendulum is swinging, is the expression of life, of action. And Ken and I talked about this the other day, and Russell's going to get into it, is the avoidance principle of nature. So what you borrow from God, you got to give back. And then, but that giving back allows God to then repeat it again for an endless cycle forever. And that's as simple.
While you're talking, John, I'm going to ask James to bring up slide 27, because this goes back to something that we covered in Unit 4, and I want to connect this for everyone, because this is where we begin to layer. This is what you're talking about here, correct?
That's it. That's it. And beyond that, nothing that exists is outside that law right there, that sequence that you see. And it's on the micro and the macro. So if you can just try to envision that holographic thing. So every idea that you have created, that you have borrowed from mind to give a physical body,
go to 28.
Right? At some point in time, okay, whatever that sequence and whatever that action is, must be re-given back to God so that he again can re-give it. And it's an endless cycle, that 4-step sequence, 4 in, 4 out, and it's beautiful. It's really,
let me mention 2 other things. So I wanted everybody to have this, because this is from Unit 4, and this is the purpose of the home study course, is it not, Margaret, that it builds on one after the other all the way through the units, very purposefully.
And also, the Russells continually say that life and death is actually occurring simultaneously. So, right up, like if you look at this image, it goes embryo, baby, child, youth, and then man, woman, which is the pinnacle. And actually, at that point, then, the expansive half takes over. And then the contracting half is dissipating. So if you were to follow it through, then it would be middle age, 70s, 90s, and then rest. And so, and we notice this, children are very physical. They're learning, they're growing, they're very active. And then beyond our prime, then we're more sedated in action, but also we become more spiritual. And you'll notice that older people, sometimes they're a little spacey, but it's because they are gradually returning to the zero or the God light. And so they're actually thinking more, or they're in their thoughts more, and they're less physical. So it's actually simultaneous, but the predominance toward rest takes over beyond the pinnacle, beyond age 50.
So let's go to the bottom of page 500. I'd like us to cover a few more things before our first break. And I want to go to where...
Can I just do one favor? Would you mind just reading the third paragraph on 500, please? I think it's so.
The one that says, make him know? Make him to know?
Third paragraph. 1, 2, 3 down. Make him to know. Yes.
Yeah, make him to know that life in bodies is but the multiplied motion of my concentrative thinking, and death is but a division of that motion, as my thinking, notice that my is capitalized, decentrates to find rest in me. And when both life and death are added together, their total is but the zero rest in me. And let me read that one next sentence, Ken, before you comment. Reduced to its utmost simplicity, this means that life and death are but two opposite directions of motion.
Yeah, what you got there actually with your little yellow marks, right? Let's say life is on the left and death is on the right. And let's say it's a half circle instead of a half cube, and we put them together. What do? You get infinite repetitive cycles. If you look at a circle, right, it's like east and west. It's continuous. It never stops going round and round. That is, so when you add life and death together, even the most common person, you think about it, take life and take death, add them together, and what does it make? It makes for infinite repetitive cycles.
All right, so let me read the next two highlighted. It says, what could be more simple? Our bodies are but wave cycles of motion. So we'll talk about that when we return, but I want to read that last paragraph. That is the thing God wants the new age of man to know. Past ages have feared death because they did not know its meaning. The dread of death is born out of the belief that man dies when his body no longer functions, and that the death of his body is his end. And so let's go to the panel for just a moment, because I want to confess here that I think that is really a large part of why I resonated so with the Russell work. Is ever since I was a child, I never had a fear of death. I somehow deeply knew that I used to be very surprised when people were at funerals and such. And as a child, I had a deep knowing that there was always a continuation, but I didn't have the words for it. So I just wanted to bring that up. Did any of you actually remember that coming in this time around, or did you learn it once you learned the Russell work?
I learned it from the Russell work.
I can't say I've ever had a fear of death. But, I think the tricky thing is I lost my father. He died rather young. And it is hard to accept the disappearance of the body, because you do feel a void. You can't help but feel a void. Even though the soul is there, the daily communication obviously is hindered,
Sure.
but every memory and every activity we share together actually becomes a part of you. And that's never lost. But I remember Leo said when Walter Russell refolded, she also wanted to refold because it is lonely. And she says when you're in a body, you want the companionship of another body. And so the only way she could really get through it is work and the letters that came from students. But she had to work and work and work to distract herself from the void or the sadness she felt.
I'll comment on a story with Ken and I in just a moment. But John, did you know when you went from early on, or did you learn it from the Russell work?
Yeah, I would say it came to me through the Russell work. I don't know that I can say that I actively feared it, but I would admit that I didn't perhaps maybe understand it, because when you're younger, you just go on what you see, and you observe, and you go through the traditions, like funerals and burials and that kind of thing, and then once you discover, and for me it was the Russells that awakened within me that there is no death, that I found solitude in that. So
I encourage everybody on the panel and that's not on the panel that's out there, as Mr. Bonds likes to say, in our audience, go look in the mirror and you point to where you're at in that body. The person you are, the being, the people that know you, where are you at in your body? Can you point to where you're at in the body?
Well, I was going to try to put a dot on your top of your forehead, Ken, and let people know that's where you are. But I couldn't do it.
I know the pineal gland, but you're beyond form. The pineal gland is that undivided, or it's the only organ in the body that doesn't have a match. So we do know that. And what we're talking about now is the soul. So, are you only your soul, or are you light too? See? So the reality of it is we're not physical. There's no physical form. There's no physical act. There's no position. There's no ritual you can do to get to God, no matter how many P's you draw on your forehead, pal.
All right, there's a lot more to cover. We're only in very early stages of less than 25. It is time
I just gotta say
3-minute
one
break.
thing, please. Can I finish that? That I just said I got from Mr. Bonsall. So I just told you the words he shared with me about the fact that we can't do anything physical to get to God because we're not physical. It's an illusion. We're light waves, just like John said. It's hard to see your body's comprised of that wave behind Kimberly there and behind John.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we know these are big concepts to everyone who is listening out there in the conversation. Feel free to put your comments in the chat box, but for right now, please stand up, stretch. There's a lot more to come as we talk about what is motion. See you in 3. All right, we're down to our last few seconds. If you are within earshot, please find your way back. It is such an honor to be with you all here today, and it is truly our joy for doing these things every Sunday night and having these conversations. And so let us continue as we go through this lesson. You know, I did want to bring up something in the talk that I gave at the University of Science and Philosophy in August. I mentioned how I had a memory during this time that Ken and I have been together of when I had a previous lifetime with him. And in that lifetime, I had no understanding that life was eternal. And so I had a past life memory come back and it flooded into me, and the pain of it flooded into me because the pain was very different when knowing I thought that I would never see him again. And imagine my shock in this dream and the vision of when I woke up in the middle of the night, understanding that I'm reliving this memory and he's right beside me. And even in this world, just studying this work, I had a moment where I was like, wow, this is him from then. Okay, I could clearly see what he looked like then, what I looked like then, and here he is now. And it was just such a different, it brought me such a understanding of peace, knowing that I could process it differently because I had a different level of consciousness now, Margaret. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And you know, I do think, and Leo often mentioned it too, that people will actually sometimes they'll be born into the same families, but they'll also reconnect. The husband and wife and, you know, very close friends will reconnect life after life after life. And it's as though, you know, there is an interchange, and it's like each soul really chooses what they need so that they have the experience that teaches them to grow, you know.
Yes. What was Leo's favorite movie, John?
Oh, Somewhere in Time, wasn't it?
Somewhere in Time. And I want to encourage everybody to watch that because Ken and I watched that after you told us that, and you want to talk about mind blowing. Truly, it describes all of this and exactly what you said, Margaret. So
do you know what her favorite TV series was?
What was it?
Touched by an Angel with Michael Landon.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You know, I'm very close to that family. I was very close to that family.
Wow. So let's go over here down to the bottom of page 501, and I'm going to move us quickly through. It says, if life and death are but motion, by the starred asterisk, what then is motion? And so I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of page 501 and read that next paragraph underlined at the bottom. It says, just as the visible tree is made to appear out of its invisible soul seed by increasing violent motion and continues to grow into bigger and better tree, so long as the violence of motion can be multiplied into more violent motion and then disappears as multiplied motion is reversed by dividing it, so has visible man been made visible by fast motion. All right, John, can you make that easy for our listeners? What does that mean?
Yes. So if you've ever burned a log in a fireplace, okay, so you have the tree, and let's say the tree had a 75 or 100-year life cycle. And then you cut that tree down at its high point, right? It hasn't started its death yet. So then you put it in the fireplace and that log starts to burn. And those flames that you see are stored light, stored energy that it took that tree 100 years to absorb and manifest. Mm. So then by burning that log, you're taking that 100-year life cycle and you're disappearing it in literally a matter of minutes. But to equal it out, so if you left the tree alone and you cut the tree down and you left it in the forest to decay, you would see them balance out. So I just gave you an accelerated version of life. Okay. and death.
Okay.
It's still a heat death. What John is saying is there's a rapid heat death if you put a flame to it, but if you put it in the forest and it decays, it's still taking the cold out of it and it's still dissipating it to a heat death. It's still losing all of its it's becoming cold and losing all of its heat. It's losing its heat rapidly. If you burn it, you just dissipate it, like you said. So, that's kind of the way you live. I think that has a lot to do with John's describing the balance of life. You can, if you're in balance and you live hard, you're going to lose your life rapidly. But if you have a balanced life, and that means mentally, spiritually, and physically, man, you can live for many, many years. You can have a really long organic life.
All right, let's pull up Linda's comment right quick before we go in. So Linda says this, she's referring to the movie, and she says, I remember hearing that music play when I visited Swananoa. And the next one, that theme from Somewhere in Time. Love that. Love that. Linda is also a graduate of one of our Russell experience as well. So as we go down to the bottom of page 502, I wanted to bring up a couple of things because it ties into about it's relevant today. When it becomes part, highlighted yellow, when it becomes part of every man's thinking that a single thought, this is what Ken is referring to, that a single thought can change the polarity of our entire body toward either life or death, and can likewise change its entire chemistry towards increasing alkalinity or acidity to strengthen or weaken it. And so I want to forward to that last sentence. It says, then the medical profession will radically change both its principles and practices in dealing with the ailments of bodies. It will look for cause in the mind first, and then the body afterward. So let's talk about that for a moment. And Margaret, I know you especially have a big passion for helping people to have their bodies be alkaline. What do you want to say about this particular paragraph?
Alkalinity, I always think of it as a charge to the body, whereas acidity is a dissipation of charge. So if we can, now our blood is technically at 7.35, which is practically neutral. But because our diets, the modern diet, is so acidic that it will often dissipate a person's energy. So if you can eat more of an alkaline diet or even alkaline water, it's actually imparting a charge to the body. Yeah. And, thinking will also give you the charge. In other words, if you're working on a project that's of great importance to you, and that's like what Leo says, your thinking can change your polarity. And that's why she often said, try not to be sad. Because when you're sad, you're losing your polarity, and you're losing your energy, and you're losing your desire to live. So you always want to choose things that will strengthen the desire of things that are important to you.
So people who know me well know that I drink a lot of fresh pressed green juice. Vegetable green juice has been a big part of my diet for many years. And it's because of that issue of that I learned about the alkalinity. And I also found that it helps raise your consciousness. The more things that I eat of the light, the more green that I pour into my physical vessel, I find that I am able to tap in certainly even a more powerful way. And so for anyone there that has any connection to anybody in the medical community, that's really, this sentence really is the cornerstone of what is wrong with our current healthcare system, is that it looks for the cause. It looks for the cause in the body instead of the mind. John, you're a big physical health person yourself.
Yes, but I'm a bigger mind person, though. I'll never forget when God gave me that revelation, and it was probably 20 years ago or more. I stood out on my front deck, and I just looked all around my place. And so it is your thinking. Now, I acknowledge everything that you guys have said, but it is your thinking. All right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. As you try to transmute a cookie into light. I'm with you on that, John. You can think it right into light. As we were just having dinner the other day, and John was saying that, which I love that. So page 503, let's look at a new viewpoint here.
I want to make a comment there, little lady,
Please.
Before you go popping all off there.
Please.
If it's a thought wave universe, then that means your thought life becomes super important, as Mr. Bonzo was trying to illustrate. right? And you can weigh it. Now, the average human being has 70,000 thoughts a day. If you're in this audience, you're listening, look right now in your own self, and your barometer is how you feel. How's your thought life right now? How are you feeling? Is the world you live in a good world full of good people, cool, good events today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, today? You can only do this now. But at 70,000 thoughts a day, for me, as a lower sense self, how in the world could you manage that, right? And thus you realize why each thought is so important, because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you're going to have, science has proven the average human being has 70 brain thinking thoughts a day. We're not talking mind. So that is a thought life connection. That's kind of what I talk about. That's what I'm really into. Thought, feeling, action. That's what I've learned from this message, is that you have a thought that creates a feeling, and that by the point that the thoughts and the feelings come together, you will take an action, whether it's negative or positive. And think about, if you get angry at one moment, like, you know, Bonzo's golf game really pisses me off because it's a good game, right? So if I'm out there playing golf with him and I'm thinking, man, why is he hitting the ball so good? Do you think I'm going to hit it any better? No way. But if I think, man, if he can do it, I can do it. Bam, all of a sudden I'm in. Just one thought. Let alone think about anger. When you're on the freeway, you're on the road. Think about how you feel after someone cuts you off and you honk at them and chase them down and drive down the road. You're toxic. Now, you know what happens when you start doing that? You attract every horrible driver in the world. But if you start seeing the road like it's nice and let people in and smile at people, man, you'll find the freeway will open up and your traffic drive will be just glorious. It's a great time to talk to God while you're driving. It's one of the best times to be in communion.
All right. So to everyone who is with us here, let's go ahead and jump to the top of page 503. So all of our TikTok
Thanks for letting
viewers,
me share,
Instagram, YouTube, come on in. Because this particular unit, I'll be honest with you, uses different language. And for me, as the newer student on the spectrum in this lifetime, for those of you that are listening, it is a little bit different, but hang tight, because it says this at the highlighted sentence: bodies are but waves of motion, pulsing waves of motion, which multiply in speed and decrease in the diameter of the thought waves, which express life and reverse the process to express death. All right, John, help us explain that, even if you need me to draw anything out. What does that
Bring
mean?
your rings back up. He needs those rings. Bring those rings back up. And he can explain it with that. Bring those rings back up. There, James.
So right, bring the rings back up on.
I think he'll be able to explain with that.
Slide 27.
Now, here's where we're going to make a separation between mind and body. Okay. So that cookie I'm going to eat later has nothing to do with my mind thought sequence.
You better leave me one. Go ahead.
The mind is what creates the body. The body doesn't create the mind. You with me on that? You have to de-emphasize the physical, because you're mind and not matter.
Say that again, because I don't know if that got caught. You are what?
You are mind. You're not matter. In other words, you are divine. You are God. You are not this physical body, but you manifest through this body, and your thought waves, those rings that you see there pulsing at the speed of light, is what gives your body life. So it doesn't matter if Ken has that Breyer's mint chip later tonight or not, and not the green drink that you're going to drink, Kimberly, has nothing to do with that sequence right there. So that's why you have to have a separation between mind and body, because the mind is what supports the body. The body doesn't support the mind. It supports itself.
All right, so I want to have a real conversation about this as we continue here, because in a later episode this month, we're going to continue the conversation about does the Earth have consciousness? Because I heard back from some students over the week, but I'm not ready for that conversation because I got to go do my research for all the Russellian terms to have a spirited discussion here. But so, and Margaret's going to chime in, but I do think the physical vessel is a part of the equation. You can't just abuse the physical vessel and expect you to be able to just overcome it all. I do believe there's a balance between the two. Margaret?
Every thought, feeling, and action you've ever had in your life, you are the sum total of it sitting on this camera right now. We are all four of us the sum total of every thought, feeling, and action we've ever had. And we are the sum total of consciousness of mankind for every thought, feeling, and action that's ever gone down before that. We are it. We are the sum total of every thought, feeling, and action we've ever had right now. So if you're not happy, that means your thoughts and your feelings, your actions are not feeling. You're not tapping into the good side of life. If you're sad, Margaret? You're too much in the morbid area.
Margaret?
Well, I agree. I'm on Kim's side because a green drink. The chemical makeup of chlorophyll is not that far from the chemical makeup of blood. So we are dependent, for our physical bodies, we are dependent on the nourishment from other bodies. There's an interchange that occurs and is necessary. Like take salt, for instance. If you don't get enough salt, right, your charge will get lowered because you need salt as an electrolyte, and it does create energy. Because of the interchange again. So, the Russells indicate that every mineral is essential, like every substance is essential and one becomes the other. So in other words, hydrogen and oxygen void one another to become water, which is crucial for survival. So now, when the Russells say it's fast, concentrative motion, our senses are dull, so we don't see the fast motion. So that's what throws people. Like Walter Russell was in the fulcrum during his illumination, so he could understand it and know it. But our senses are dull, so we can't actually see the violent, fast motion that occurs to create a tree. Or
what would happen if we could see it, Margaret? Out of curiosity, what would happen if we could see it?
Well, it would be too much for us, in other words.
Wouldn't it cease to exist? It would be void, right? It'd be the avoidance principle. If you saw both sides and God stopped thinking, everything would cease to exist, right? It's sort of like the movie projector. God is that white light projecting through the film. The film is a projection on the screen.
Right. I mean, we think of our bodies as physical because our senses are dull, and our bodies are a projection. As you said, Ken, earlier, if you were to take all the space out, it would be a pinpoint, not even that. It is a projection, but it feels very solid because we have dull senses, and the senses are still a tool, but the Russells, when they were in the fulcrum or in their illumination, they actually could see the construction of matter.
Yeah, the way Walter states the senses is that we miss 98% of the universe. We only see 2%. Our senses we only are allowed to see 2% of what is in that universe. Mm-hmm. And that's why, therefore, I know I've read it through the course that Walter stated that God is space. And if you think about space, it centers the atom and it surrounds the atom. Space is everywhere. The universe is the bulk of the universe is space. So are you.
I have more to say about that, but I know John's going to comment as well. But I want to bring up Anne Marie's thought. Anne Marie says this. John, if you would read her comment.
Anne Marie Bass says, I feel better when my body is in balance, and that is a focus for me. Yes. So if you have balanced thinking, why would your body not
Yep.
be in balance,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
So they go hand in hand. So very good for her to understand that.
Well, and that's what I find. I tend to be a bit of a consciousness climber in this lifetime, and I tend to outrun a lot of people. And I not always, of course, I've had my match here on the screen. But what I have found is that when people are very into dense foods, dense sugar, dense things that keep them at a very low vibration, I find that there tends to be a difference in consciousness. What I also find, I saw that rolling of the eyes, Pearson. What I also find is that the rhythmic balance interchange, because this goes to Deb's comment. Deb says this, shouldn't there shouldn't there shouldn't there be a balance of mind and physical? And one of my favorite teachings out of the whole home study course is rhythmic balance interchange. So my answer would be yes to that. John?
Nope.
Shouldn't there be a balance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The
Does
Right.
balance, though, think about it. You don't go to the gym, physically take yourself to the gym without your mind deciding, I'm going to the gym. And if you go to the gym
True.
half baked,
True.
I don't want to do this, you're probably not going to have a good workout. But if you go to the gym and go, I know I don't want to do this, but I know I'll feel better afterwards. Now, is that a physical act or a mental act?
Both.
Mind, it is a mind universe. Thought, feeling, action in that order.
But another way to think of it too is when you have a full day of activity, you'll have a better day, a better night of rest.
Yes. Yeah, we
Yeah,
were
charge
if
and
you have-
discharge. That's
If you
yes.
have low activity through the day,
Yep.
you have not earned a good nightly rest.
Oh, I love the way that sounds. Wow. Okay, so
Mhm.
let's go down here to the bottom of page 503. Because where I've circled the highlight, because then it goes into the next sentence. And John, I'm going to ask you to read that sentence after I make this idea. Go up a little bit, James. It says, all motion is making believe that it is something which it really is not. John, the next paragraph.
Realize what you are realize what you are so that you
Roll
can
up.
forget your body through intense inspiration and can see yourself as the undivided, unchanging, invisible mind of creation.
Wow.
Then picture what your mind does when it thinks what it knows by taking its one whole idea apart into seeming separate ideas and assembling those separate ideas into a machine or painting or building which manifests another idea. So,
All right. So let me go one more sentence, John, because scroll down, James, in the blue sentence, and John, because we can add this to it. This principle of division and projection creates a universe of tensions which perpetually desires release from tensions. All
so you
right,
got a
let's go to
rubber
the
band.
panel.
You got a rubber band handy?
Dang,
Oh,
John, I
God,
asked
that's
you
good.
earlier.
Bonzo, I swear to God, I was totally on that thought. I was totally on the rubber band and the fulcrum thought, the stick and those.
Because I can find one, and that's one of the best examples
Yep, simplest.
of this principle.
All right, I don't have a rubber band handy. I asked him earlier what toy we needed.
Well, just
Can you-
describe it.
Go ahead, Ken. You fill in while I get one.
All right.
Where
Imagine a stake in the ground. That is called a fulcrum, a piece of fence post, if you will, right? That's your fulcrum. And now you got a rubber band that's attached to that fence post. No matter how far you walk out with that rubber band and you walk away from that post, the same energy you're pulling is the same energy pulling you back. So the fulcrum, without the fulcrum, you can't even borrow. So it's always borrowed. Just like John says, you're borrowing that energy, and that energy has the equal and proportion desire to return with the force that is being taken away from. You can take that rubber band as far as you want, but the farther you take it, the more it wants to bring you back to the post.
All right, so let's go through that sequence.
All right,
So you
focusing
have
on John with his rubber band here.
Yes. So you have an idea. An idea comes into your mind, and now you want to manifest that idea. And the way you manifest it, the power behind the idea is desire. All right, now watch. So here's the idea at rest. All right. And desire to manifest causes that idea, we'll just say, to spring into action. There it is. Now, the tension, right, is a result of the degree of desire in which you have put into that idea. Right. Now, let's say you get sidetracked
To manifest that idea.
You go, oh, damn, the phone's ringing. Oh, somebody's at the door. Right. And then you get into a conversation. And like Ken said, this is just one of those 70,000 thoughts that you had. And then you let it go. And then that idea just comes back to rest.
Right.
But the tension, right, is that two-way expression from zero. And if maybe James could bring up those rings again, because that's a perfect example, right? There you go. So we'll stretch it out, right? Stretch it out.
Go a little higher,
that
John.
idea,
Go a little higher.
that idea is being made manifest, right? And that sequence,
Now, if I came along and plucked that rubber band, what would it do, Bonzo? Like a string.
You mean make a sound?
And not only that, it'll create loops, won't it?
Yes. So anyway, the tension and the rubber band is a great example. And Kimberly, those two spirals that you have are another way to feel the tension when an idea is expressed. You know how you kind of, you can feel that, right? When you kind of like pull them together and you're twisting them and you feel that tension. And that's what it is.
Margaret, you want to add to the collection? You need a toy. We can send you ours.
For Christmas, we got to get her one of those toys.
That's right. We got to have a panel Christmas giveaway.
Well, I was just going to add that, through a workaday world, we're really doing this all day long. It is a day of, coming into tension, coming back, coming into tension, coming back. And so that's happening all day long. So the Russells reference that kind of as the pulse beat, our heart's pulse beat or our daily pulse beat. So it's doing this all day long. Now, if it's out of balance, it's not doing this, but it's doing this.
It's just
and it'll make a person ill.
Well, so I was just thinking I needed a little image because I know that I tend to rub my rubber band way out there and Ken's like bringing it back in. So I totally relate to that, Margaret.
Margaret, I was trying to envision our audience watching you, but there was no sound. And when Margaret was going, and can you imagine if there was no sound and they're like, what are these guys talking about?
Right.
But
well, remember too, Leo always said, happy blood is healthy blood.
Yes.
Now, if a person is unhappy or tense, or they had a fight with their significant other, and they're just, all they can think of is the fight that they had. So it sickens the blood.
Yeah.
So you have to somehow bring yourself back into balance with your significant other, or find some mode of rebalancing. Otherwise, you will get sick.
Matter of fact, we just read in that prior paragraph that every malady, if medicine would look into the mind before they looked at the body, they would find cause there. Every element we ever have comes from our mind first, starts in our mind.
All right, so there's a lot more to cover.
That's a scientific fact, dear.
I want to bring up Karen's comment right quick. She did make me chuckle. She said, "You all are so cute." So thank you very much, Miss Karen.
Hey, honey, I think you passed the break.
Well, I did. We're getting ready to take our next break. So everyone, please stand up, get some oxygen.
Woo,
we'll see you in
dance.
3.
We got to dance, baby. We're going to be like all them motivation speakers out there. Get out and dance, put on some music, dance, man, dance the night away. Oh, no, I'd rather hear a little Mozart, some Beethoven, though, I'll tell you the truth.
That's right.
That's dancing, baby. That's some dancing right there.
And you wonder why our break ran a little behind. See you in 3. All right. If you're within earshot, we would love to have you come back and join us. We're down to our last few pages here of Unit 7, Lesson 25. We are working through the home study course that was written by Walter and Leo Russell. We are into our seventh month. As we go through that. I'm not sure what just happened to Ken's video, but he'll come back again in just a moment. It looks like a shadow of his former self. So if there's a little bit of a glitch there, looks a little bit of a glitch there. All right. So what's interesting is here in Unit 7, we get into something really, really important. And I want to go to the bottom of page 504 where it's circled in blue. And John, if you would read that paragraph, please.
Also, you will more clearly visualize the universal heartbeat as a universal pump, which light waves compress and expand simultaneously and sequentially, seeming to divide the undivided, to change the changeless, to give measure where no measure is, and to condition the unconditioned. Isn't that beautiful? I love that wording.
So I wanted to go back to slide 22, James, because John, does this particular paragraph tie in with the image from Unit 1? I'm just curious. Yes or no? You can say no.
No, it's not the best, but it would apply. The bottom part where you see the concentration and the decentration, right? And compression, expansion. That's all people need to know, really. But yes, that works.
Okay. Well, I'm just encouraging people that this is why we encourage you to get a copy of your own home study course. We'll have the link there for those of you who are interested in joining us. But I wanted to pop down to the middle of 505. And in the yellow highlight, it says this. It says, if you will meditate long upon this thought, you will realize that every desire to multiply your power to think concentratively is followed by a desire to rest from the fatigue of that concentration. If you will now fully carry this thought through, you will gradually realize that you are constantly interchanging your thoughts and actions with God as co-creator with him.
You should read a little bit more, love, just the next paragraph.
Okay. If you work actively all day, this is what Margaret's talking about.
Yes.
If you work actively all day, you will want to lie down and rest all night.
Go get him, Margaret.
Then when you rest all night, you are being reborn with new life from God so that you again may rest all day.
Wahoo!
Work all day.
So think about that for a moment. Right? So you give to God, God gives to you, and that sequence never ends.
Nope.
Never ends.
Even with your breathing, right?
That's it. Think about that. Yep.
You know, I think also, guys, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think it's important. Go ahead, Margaret. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, you know, the work through the day is really, we're in a man's universe, right? We're working.
Damn right you are.
Day. And then at night, right, we're giving ourselves back to God. So in other words, God gives us the energy for the activity throughout the day, but we have to re-give all of that back when we rest.
Well, that actually goes. Go ahead, Ken.
And it's happening sequentially, simultaneously, which we don't think it is. We think there's a delay, but if you think of the sun, it shines 360 degrees every day of the year. We think we only get half a day and half a night, but that's the illusion of duality, isn't it? So just like Margaret said before about the trees, right? The tree exudes carbon dioxide, oxygen, and we express carbon dioxide. There's a constant interchange. It's happening all at the same time. Each is voiding the other while each is feeding the other. So everything is becoming every other thing at the speed of 186,000 miles per second.
So there are some things I want to bring up because we have a few more pages to cover here. At the bottom of page 505, it says this. And this is what we were talking about. It says, let us review it. You begin your day of manifesting life, all caps, from a point of rest and sleep. Your day is filled with dynamic actions and building the product of your thinking. The energy which has been given to you by your creator, capital C, while you rested during the night is gradually being regiven to him. That's what Margaret was saying during the day, until you have to stop at a point of rest to return to your source, capital S, for more energy. You only think of it, however, as having grown so tired that you again have to lie down and rest for sleep that night. You must gradually learn to think of it as it is, however. You must think of it as return to God for replenishment of power, or even giving your death to God in exchange for his regiving of life. Now, two other things I want to bring up to the panel before we open up for discussion. Vigorous action and desire for work in the morning manifest the life principle, and go down to where the brackets are, the blue brackets. This I thought was a really powerful sentence. To live is to move. To die is to become still. You are forever dying as you live and forever living as you die. Every pulse beat of your heart manifests both life and death. Wow.
Can I just before we end, hun, can we make sure we get to 508 in that paragraph that I suggested? I think that's going to be real important. There's a great principle in there, so I just want to put that in there if you can.
The bottom of which paragraph?
508, first paragraph.
Okay, we will. We're getting down there in just a bit. You want me to go ahead and skip ahead? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think I want to illustrate a point here so that people don't think we're just automatrons, right? It sounds like, oh great, we all have these wonderful thoughts about da 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 da, but it tells you here in this paragraph. Go ahead and read that. Whoever would like to read it.
Go ahead.
Next one, the antidote for grief.
I'll read it. The antidote for grief, however, is knowledge. And
One up. Hold on, Margaret. Go up. You're going to that, but read that first one. There you go. You had it right, James. This is a good to know. There you go. This is good to know.
This is good to know, but that does not mean that our human emotions are to be voided when bodies of our loved ones cease to continue their physical existence with us. When we grieve for loss of human companionship, we are fully justified in so doing, for no amount of knowledge should dehumanize us to the extent that grief should be reasoned away by knowledge. The antidote for grief, however, is knowledge and the power to be mentally united in memories and imaginings. The highly developed inner sensory person is never alone or lonely because he is always one with all things.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I actually love that next part. It says, when we know that we cannot die or be alone, and that desire for body still continues forever in the eternal self of man, and that a new body will reappear from that desire just as surely as dawn follows the night. We will then have an enrichment for our grief through knowledge instead of misery and hopelessness due to the ignorance of our immortality. The confusion which has made death so tragic and terrible has arisen from ignorance of God's creative processes.
May I? Wow. May I? So,
please.
What I have also, you'll read, especially in the Divine Iliad, that grief, your capacity for happiness and joy is equal to your capacity to grieve and suffer. So if you can't properly grieve and suffer, which is a part of life, there are chapters in life that hurt. And if you block it and hide from it, you're also blocking and hiding from your own joy. So we learn to walk through things knowing there's always purpose in everything. Everything is purposeful, even at the hardest of times. And I have myself in this message gone through some stuff and validated that pain, but my capacity to grieve and suffer was neutralized. It was healed by my knowledge that I will also know this pain and suffering will also equal in joy and happiness. And that's the counter side, dual side of those emotions. So if I can handle this grieving and suffering, imagine the happiness and joy you can have. So if you've had grieving and suffering in your life, you know you have a right to your happiness and joy beyond your measure, to your capacity of what you have grieve and suffer. So you don't need to stay in grieving and suffering. And that's why I say knowledge will bring you out of it, but it doesn't mean you bypass that grieving. So it's an important part.
Margaret?
Leo often quoted Khalil Gibran. The deeper sorrow carves into your heart, the more joy you can contain.
Kimberly,
John, you
since
had a-
we're on this subject, I thought I would guide our listening audience to the USP homepage and go to archives and bring up the Clara Clemens letter,
Okay.
that 18-page letter. For the first time in the course of human history, people will read what actually takes place at death and where your astral body goes and how it goes and the timing and so on. It is magnificent. I'd like to
So,
lecture
John,
on that letter one day.
James is going to bring up that website because I want to make sure you're directing everybody to the right place. It's philosophy.org, and you want them to go find the archives section.
I think that's where it's located.
Okay. So, all
There it
right.
is.
So he's got it
There
pulled
it
up
is.
there.
Yes. That is magnificent. And it's not an easy read. You got to take your time with it.
Maybe
And,
it'd be a good read on one of these weeks. We should
Yes,
squeeze
yes,
it
it
in.
would.
John just said he wanted to lecture on it, so let's
Okay.
break it down.
But
Maybe
I'm
we'll-
just saying, since we're on the subject of life and death,
Yeah.
and Ken was talking about the emotions of grief and so on, and Clara Clemens had grieved so deeply
Yeah.
that she just couldn't, and she asked Dr. Russell for his help for those two to connect again, since her husband Gabrilowitz passed on. And so Dr. Russell refused her request initially, and then he said, "Okay, I'm gonna walk you through this. I think you can handle it." So anyway, I'm not going to give the secrets
love
out,
that.
but it's a wonderful read. And this subject matter we're on tonight, I just thought it was a good. Margaret, I do want to say something about you this evening. The
About
sweater
who?
and your look. You look like a high priestess this evening.
Love it. Love it.
Well, she is, man.
She is.
She
Yes.
is a high priestess, baby. She earned them stripes, man.
Yes, she did.
It's
I
my
wanted to-
Christmas sweater.
Yes.
Yes, it is, Miss Margaret. I just matched John's uranium glass behind him. That's what I'm matching here today. So at the bottom of page 509, the conclusion says this: the following words of our father mother given in his message. And I just love the way the Russells call it father mother. That was so healing to me, of how often they refer to the divine as father mother, because to me that is one of the biggest grievances I've had with the way we handle religion and society, is that we don't combine that father and mother. The following words of our father mother given in his message for the cosmic age of man will be good for your deep meditation while awaiting further unfoldment of the glory which is man. And so I wanted to bring this up to everybody, is that this is the divine Iliad again, and it is absolutely beautiful. If there's anything that any of you want to bring up, I just wanted to bring up the first two. It says, again, I say, I am the soul of my universe of creating things. Within my being is desire for manifesting my being. Desire in me is soul in me.
I like the third paragraph, the fifth paragraph, and the last paragraph.
Read the one that you like.
Again, I say, I am the seed of my unfolding, refolding universe. Within my light, all formless seed of planned idea are enfolded in my being at rest in me. There is not but birth in my imaginings. There is no death in me. Go down a little bit, James, please. For endings and beginnings are one in me. Get it? Endings and beginnings. That's life and death. They're one in the light of God, which was centering you. Not but life reacheth out from me, and not but life meeteth returning life for rebirth in me. Again, I say the mirrored multiples of my thought images are but reflections of my imaginings. They are not me. So that's sort of like all the songs that Beethoven or Mozart ever created in the symphonies are only extensions of them. You can't find Mozart or Beethoven in those songs. They're extensions of them. The idea of the music they conceived never leaves them. It's just borrowed, and they extend it and simulate it as mirrors of something they registered in knowledge by desire. Like John said, they desire. Everybody can play music like Beethoven and Mozart if your desire is equal to Beethoven and Mozart's to play that kind of music.
Wow. So this was a big, big subject. And I just want to bring up again in honor of Jackie. So how fitting it was that this was the lesson after she refolded. And refolding is what what Leo and Walter Russell called it, right, Margaret? And Margaret, why was that? Why is the word refolding what they refer it to?
Right. The unfolding. So the idea is there. And when conditions are right, the desire is allowed to unfold the idea or unfold the projection of you. And then, it's natural that, our body does lose charge. When you're 70s, 80s, 90s, you're losing charge or the ability to maintain the projected image. And so, in other words, you're re-giving that back to the stillness. So you're refolding the idea back to the stillness so that it can again be unfolded.
Quite poetic.
Because we just read there is no death. So if you say death as opposed to refolding, it's a conflict of the message. There is no death. There is but life. That is something to ponder on.
Margaret spoke about this earlier, but with the senses. So what happens is the body at death, what we call death, is simply beyond our sensed range.
Yep.
But if our senses had that greater range, then you could see the process that Dr. Russell is going to talk about in that Clara Clemens letter. How one cell at a time.
Yeah.
Journeys out, and the light goes with it, and it's a beautiful thing. So anyway,
all right, we'll answer some questions in just a moment, but it is a time for the gift of love that Karen Elkins, editor of Science and Sage, does for us and during each week. So we have a video again here for you. Even though she could not be with us here this evening, she was sure to pull something together as it relates to the opening of Unit 7. And next week we will continue with the next unit. And so when we're ready, James, we'll pull up the video and let's wrap up our session here for this evening. right, John. Everybody, you're on mute. Please come off mute. What a beautiful, beautiful video that Karen pulled together for us. And all of these videos are actually on our channel. You liked that one, didn't you, John?
I did. She never fails to amaze me in the color
Really?
sequence. And that's as a little note, Ken and I talked about this the other day, is for our audience to take their time if they're going to play those videos, maybe
Yeah.
pause, read the entire statements, and then look at because she does a very good job of relating the visuals to the message to the right. And I love that one because it tied into this evening. You see the astral body, the gold one
Yes.
heading up, and leaving. I thought that was just beautiful.
And in fact, many of you are getting a sneak peek at a journal we're working on pulling together that's going to be available very soon. So it'll be like just simply another gift as a companion for what it is that you're already studying. Let's pull up Anne Marie's comment. Anne Marie says this. She says, I like that reference, Father, Mother. Thank you, Anne Marie. I do as well. Margaret, would you read Bonnie's question, please?
Bonnie says, is it possible to eventually hold all of these levels of knowing easily and access them purposefully?
The
And
answer?
I would say yes, definitely. Walter Russell did, Leah Russell did. And, I think continual study of the home study course is our best chance, reminding ourselves of this process.
I agree.
I would use a Russellian term as her awakening unfolds and continues. Okay, then it becomes a part of her permanently and part of her thinking permanently, and then the access to them, it's there. It's not something that you have to go and look for and search for, because when you know something, you know it, right?
Yes. I know I carry, this is one of my most treasured items. I carry these each unit with me every single time I travel. I have it accessible every single day. And I know Ken does the same. Ken, you had a thought?
It's not an intellectual thing. It's a living application. It's organic. The message is either alive in you right now or it's not. And alive in you is just contemplating one principle you just read. You can contemplate life and death. You can contemplate grieving, capacity, happiness, and joy, and you're in it. One principle. Remember, they're all connected. You touch one of these principles and you touch all of them. That's the beauty of this home study course and the power of it. And why we read it over and over is because it every time. Yes, go ahead, John. Sorry.
I wanted to ask Kimberly.
Is that your middle finger or is that your index finger?
No, that was my index.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
I was going to ask Kimberly to hold up the home study course again, the front page. And the last word there, the last two words at top, what's it say?
Living philosophy.
Living.
Thank you.
Organic, baby.
And so that is our purpose. I'm just going to speak for the panel and I'm going to speak for the collective. This is what we're trying to give to our audience and to the world, to have a purpose for living. Okay.
So
and the principles that we talk about. All right. And doing so, if we can bring some joy to your life and free you from all the self-imposed and outside influences, to give you a greater awareness of your God self, then we're doing a pretty good job.
And what a joy it is. Last few comments, and then I'll come to Margaret. Karen says this. She says, whoops, I was at Swananoa 30 years ago. Funny how time flies. I'm wondering if you were there, John. The museum was still, the Swananoa was still open and the statue of Jesus was still there. Were you around then, John?
Let's see. 30 years ago would have been 94.
Okay.
No.
You weren't there then. Okay. Just a few decades before that.
See, I can't see Karen's.
I stumbled into the man who tapped the secrets of the universe in 94.
See, I can't see Karen's eyes because of those sunglasses, but I wouldn't. See, I don't forget a face.
Rita says this. Rita comments about the video. She said, that was lovely. Rita, so glad you enjoy that. Karen gives us those gifts every week. And
Yeah.
Karen's actually our another comment there in the chat box. Karen sums up our whole episode. I am eternal, and so is everyone. Thanks again to Karen who did the video. All right, everyone, that brings us to the end of our lesson 25. Next week, we'll be diving into Unit 7, Lesson 26. So please continue the journey with us. Please remember that we have been telling you that the man who tapped is a great stocking stuffer for anybody that you want to be able to just share the information, share what this is all about. And we want to say a gracious thank you to you. This is such a joy for us to continue this conversation. Can't wait to see what the rest of the month is going to take us. A gracious thank you to you all, and a gracious thank you to Margaret for joining us again. And it is always a joy to be with John and my beloved Ken. Until next time, everyone. Until next time.